Assalamu Alaikum. Hello my dear students. So this is the fourth class of biology, and in the previous class we were discussed about nerves and its peculiarities. We discussed about nerves, and there are three types of nerves: sensory nerve, motor nerve and mixed nerve. Okay, then in this class we are going to discuss about the nervous system. So nervous system. Okay, so there are in nervous system. So in this class we are going to discuss about the nervous system. So the nervous system consists of central nervous system and a peripheral nervous system. There is central nervous system and a peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system and a peripheral nervous system. Okay. So we can classify the nervous system into two: central nervous system and a peripheral nervous system. So the central nervous system, there is brain and spinal cord. In central nervous system there is brain and spinal cord. We already learned that about the central nervous system. Central nervous system consists of brain and spinal cord. In peripheral nervous system there is cranial nerves and spinal nerves. Cranial nerves and cranial nerves. In peripheral nervous system there is cranial nerves and spinal nerves. So this is about the nervous system. So the nervous system, spinal nerves. Okay. So the nervous system consists of two parts: central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. And in central nervous system there is brain and spinal cord. In central nervous system there is brain and spinal cord. We already learned that. And in peripheral nervous system there is cranial nerves and spinal nerves. There is cranial nerves and spinal nerves. The cranial nerves is 12 pair and the spinal nerve is 13 pair. 31 pair. 12 pair and 31 pair. Okay. So in the nervous system there are central nervous system and peripheral nervous system, and central nervous system consists of brain and spinal cord. Here the peripheral nervous system consists of cranial nerves and spinal nerves. The cranial nerves there is 12 pair and in spinal nerves there is 31 pair. You can see the diagram in page number 30. Okay. So now we are going to discuss about the important thing in this chapter brain. It is not important the chapter, it is also important in our body also. So we are going to discuss about the brain. Can you imagine a person without brain? So brain. Okay. Brain. So it's an important thing. You just listen carefully about the brain. Okay. So brain is the central part of the nervous system. Brain is the central part of the nervous system, and brain get nutrition and protection. Okay. The brain is protected inside the skull. Brain എവിടെയാണ് പ്രൊട്ടക്ട് ചെയ്തേക്കുന്നത്? സ്കള്ളിൽ. Okay. Brain is protected inside the skull. തലയോട്ടി എന്ന് പറയത്തില്ലേ? So the brain is protected inside the skull and it is covered by the meninges. It is covered by the skull and it is covered by the meninges. So the brain is protected within the skull and it is covered by a three-layered membrane called meninges. It is how many layered? Three-layered membrane. Okay. Three-layered membrane. So the brain is protected inside the skull and it is covered by a three-layered membrane called meninges. Meninges. Okay. Meninges. It is important at the exam point of view. The brain is protected inside the skull and then it is covered by a three-layered membrane called meninges. Okay. Then there is a fluid inside the brain called cerebrospinal fluid. എന്താണ്? Cerebrospinal fluid. There is a fluid called cerebrospinal fluid. It is more important. So inside the brain, the cerebrospinal fluid is filled within the inner membranes of the meninges. It is where it is filled? It is filled in the inner membranes of the meninges. It is filled in the inner membranes of the meninges. So cerebrospinal fluid. What is cerebrospinal fluid? The fluid we can see where inside the meninges. Cerebrospinal fluid we can see in the meninges and the ventricles of the brain. Okay, so the brain is protected inside the skull and it is covered by a three-layered membrane called meninges. Okay, there is a three-layered membrane called meninges, and inside the meninges there is a fluid called cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, then what are the functions of the cerebrospinal fluid? Now we are going to discuss about the cerebrospinal fluid's function. Okay, the functions of the cerebrospinal fluid. What are the functions of cerebrospinal fluid? It is very important, so listen carefully. The cerebrospinal fluid formed from the blood is reabsorbed into the blood. Okay, right. The form the cerebrospinal fluid formed from the blood. Blood il form the cerebrospinal fluid formed from the blood, and also it reabsorbed into the blood. Okay, so the functions of the cerebrospinal fluid. What are the functions of the cerebrospinal fluid? Now we are going to discuss about the functions of cerebrospinal fluid. What are the functions? Okay. So it provides nutrients and oxygen. It provides nutrients and oxygen to the tissues and the brain. The first function is it provides nutrients and oxygen. To provide nutrients and oxygen to the brain and other parts. Nutrients and oxygen to the brain and other parts. The first function is it provides nutrients and oxygen to the brain and other parts. The second function is it regulate the pressure inside the brain. Okay, to regulate the pressure. The second function, it regulate the pressure. To regulate the pressure, where? It regulate the pressure inside the brain. Okay. So the first function is it provide nutrients and oxygen to the tissues of the brain, and the second function, it regulate the pressure inside the brain. Okay, and protect the brain from injuries, and it regulate the pressure in the brain and it protect the brain from injuries. Okay, it protect the brain from injuries. It protect the brain from injuries. So what are the functions of cerebrospinal fluid? So the cerebrospinal fluid provides nutrients and oxygen to the tissues of the brain, and the second one is it regulate the pressure inside the brain, and the third one is it protect the brain from injuries. It protect the brain from injuries. Okay, these are the functions of what? These are the functions of cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, it protects the brain from external shocks or injuries. Okay, it protects the brain from injuries. So these are the functions of cerebrospinal fluid. So the brain is protected inside the skull and covered by a three-layered membrane called meninges. Okay, and inside the brain there is a fluid called cerebrospinal fluid. It is seen in the meninges. And what are the functions of the cerebrospinal fluid? It provides nutrients and oxygen. The second one is it regulate the pressure inside the brain, and the third one is it protect the brain from injuries. Okay. So now we are going to discuss about the parts of brain. What are the parts of brain? There are for brain there are main parts are cerebrum. The first one is cerebrum. Okay, cerebrum. The second one is cerebellum. Cerebrum, cerebellum. The third one is medulla oblongata. Medulla oblongata. Okay, and the fourth one is thalamus. The fifth one is hypothalamus. These are the important part of the brain. There are other parts for brain, but we have to learn about just cerebrum, cerebellum, medulla oblongata, thalamus and hypothalamus. Okay. So what are the important parts of brain? Cerebrum, cerebellum, medulla oblongata, thalamus, hypothalamus. Okay. So what are the important parts of cerebrum, cerebellum, medulla oblongata, thalamus and hypothalamus. So in the next class we will discuss about the parts and the functions also. So now we can wind up the class. So in the class we were discussed about the parts of the brain. What are the important parts of brain? Cerebrum, cerebellum, medulla oblongata, thalamus and hypothalamus. These are the important parts of the brain. In the next class we will discuss about the parts and functions deeply. So we can wind up the class now. Thank you.